Hello everyone, good morning. Today we are going to see about Snowflake different types of tables. So there are three types of Snowflake tables. They are permanent table, transient and temporary tables. Snowflake offers there are three main types of tables: permanent, transient and temporary. Each designed for different use cases based on the data persistency, recovery needs and cost. Understanding how they differ is essentially for designing efficient and cost-effective data architecture. Basically, why we need a table in Snowflake? We have to store the data. Either it can be the raw data or source data, or processed data or transformed data. Any kind of data, we need a data storage to store the data. The data should be stored persistently in the database. Whenever there is a loss of data, we should need a backup or the recovery of the data. And we also bother us about what is the cost, maintenance and storage cost when we are going to store the huge amount of the data. So these are the main aspects why we are going for the data storage. Each designed for the different use. These are the different use cases why the data warehouse is going to store the data. How they are differ is essentially for designing efficient and cost-effective data structures. Whatever the data storage we are going to build, it should be efficient in the design as well as cost-effective. The data storage should be able to store many number of data, large amount of data, can be millions and billions of data. That is why we are going for the three types of tables in Snowflake. What is a table in Snowflake? A table in Snowflake is a structured collection of data. Structured collection means it is going to store first table, second table, third table, fourth table, and each table will be having the rows and columns with the primary keys constraints. It is stored in the form of columns and rows. Tables are used to store data permanently or temporarily for queries, transformations, and analytics. Why we are using the tables and database? To store the data. It will be stored in the form of the rows and columns. Either you will be storing it permanently for long run, or temporarily only for 1 week or 2 weeks. To store the queries, we have to query the data from the database table. For doing so, whatever the transformations done so far, whatever the analytics done so far. That's why we are using the tables to store the data temporarily or permanently, so that we can query the data in the table, we can do some transformations with the data in the table, and also we can do some analytics in the data. Unlike traditional databases, Snowflake stores all data in the cloud storage. All data means structured data, semi-structured data, correct? These are the different types of data. It can be in the form of CSV, Excel, parcel, Avro, JSON, any kind of the data it can be. In the traditional databases, it was not supporting for all type of the data types, mainly data. But Snowflake stores all data. It is separated from the compute. Whatever the data you are going to store in the storage layer, it is completely independent from the compute layer. The compute layer does the analysis and query performance. It does the query computation. It is completely independent from the storage layer and provides multiple table types for different retention needs. So it is going to provide the multiple table needs. Multiple table needs means permanent, transient and temporary for the data retention needs. I'm going to store the data for many number of days, that is permanent. I'm going to use it for only 1 day, temporary. I'm going to use it for 1 week, transient. So what are the The transient table and permanent table will have the time travel and data file recovery for more number of days in the enterprise edition of the Snowflake data warehouse, whereas the standard edition will have the very less number of days. So according to the data retention needs, you are going to decide which is the table you are going to use for the storage. That is what we discussed about what is a table in Snowflake. Permanent tables. Permanent tables store data long term and are designed for critical business data that must be preserved. For example, few customers will store their data from 20 years. For example, they would like to have 20 years of data, 10 years of data, 5 years of data. So long run, they want to store the data and design for very critical business. If this data is lost, their business is lost. That is called the critical business data. For that, we will be using permanent tables. Key features are data is fully persistent. Persistence means it is stored for long term. It includes time travel default 1 day, extended up to 90 days. That's what I told in the previous slide. Permanent table will have the long number of the time travel, and it depends on the edition also which we are choosing for the Snowflake. It includes the time travel from 1 day to 90 days. File safe protection for 7 days, and beyond the time travel, we have to go for the file safe. Time travel will support only for 7 days, and beyond that, if you are going for the file safe, you have to take the support of the Snowflake admin team to get the data retrieval. It is suitable for the production grade and analytical data. Definitely production data. What is production data? Real-time data where the customer is going to see the data live. That is called production grade data. And analytical data which are used for the analytics purpose where the analysis is going on. So these kind of data will be stored in the permanent tables. This is the syntax for creating the permanent table. Create or replace command. Table is a keyword. Sales underscore data is a table name. Order ID, customer name and amount. These are the 3 columns with the data type integer, string and decimal of 10,2. Integer supports number, string supports varchar and decimal of 10, support 2 supports the floats. So this is the syntax for creating that table. If no type is mentioned, Snowflake automatically creates a permanent table. If you are not going to mention what type of table it is, Snowflake is default mentioning this as a permanent table. What are the use case of permanent table? Storing official business records, historical analysis and reporting, compliance or auditing requirements. In the permanent table, what kind of data will be stored? Official business data, customer client data. Historical analysis means for many years, not the current year. For the last 5 years, last 10 years, those data will be stored for the historical analysis and it will be used for the reporting as well. Auditing requirements means I want to see when this table is created, which user has created this table, how long this table has been used in this transaction. So these are the things we are going to refer. Transient tables. Transient tables are similar to permanent ones, but with a limited data protection. Transient tables are also similar to the permanent table, but with a limited data protection. Key features are data is persistent but does not have the file safe. In the transient table, you can store the data persistent. Or similarly to kind of a permanent table, you can store it for a long time, but they don't have the file safe. They have only the time travel, which is supported for only 1 day or less. Cheaper the storage since file safe costs are avoided. It supports very cheaper storage because file safe cost is not included in that. Ideal for intermediate or staging data that does not need long-term recovery. So intermediate or staging data means, for example, if you are going to do the ETL process, in this you are going to build some models in the staging or intermediate level. So that time this transient table will be used. Fact or dimension tables or the business that is comes under the marked model. So that one cannot be built using this transient type. That needs a permanent table supports. But here, which is required for intermediate and staging, very less transformations will be done. Very small amount of data will be stored. The stagings are mostly views. For that purpose, we'll be using this transient table, which does not need long-term recovery. This is the syntax for creating the transient tables. Create or replace. In this, you have to mention what is the table type. Transient table, stage underscore data, 3 columns, ID, product, and quantity. ID belongs to the integer data type, product belongs to the string, and quantity belongs to the integer. Use case. ETL intermediate or staging layers. So in the ETL process, we have staging layer, intermediate layer, mark layer. In the staging, we'll be having views or sometimes the transient tables. In the intermediate layer, we'll be having the transient tables. In the mark layer, we'll be having the permanent table, which has the dimension and the fact tables. Temporary data transformations. The very small temporary data means which data I don't require for the long run. So those data transformations will be done in this stage. Scenarios where cost optimization is preferred over the data recovery. So I don't want to bother about much in the data recovery. This data I'm going to use for only temporary period. For that purpose only I'm going for this transient tables. If I'm bothered about the data recovery, then I should go for the permanent table which cost high when compared to the transient tables. If the data is accidentally deleted, recovery is limited due to lack of failsafe. Temporary tables. It exists only within the user session and are automatically dropped at the end of the session. For example, in the Snow site, I have given the login and I'm going to use one user session. If I'm going to log out of this session and I will be logging back again at 2:30, when I enter back, when whatever the temporary table I have created, that will be lost. Key features are data is not permanent and vanishes after session needs. Once your session is closed, data will go off. No time travel, no file safe. Data is stored in the Snowflake managed temporary storage, visible only to the session that created it. So in the Snowflake user session, whenever how long you are active, this temporary table will be alive and active. When you have logged off from the session, this temporary table life will goes off. It doesn't have the time travel or file serve, any important feature of the Snowflake. So this is used only for temporary purpose. Whomever wants to use the data only for one session, they will go for the temporary tables. This is the syntax for creating the temporary table. Create temporary table. You have to mention the table type here. Select star from sales data. Use case, session level data analysis. In the user session, I'm going to log in only for 1 hour. Whatever the session is active, for that session only I can use this data. Complex transformations, that you cannot do any complex transformations here because they don't need persistence. If you want to do the complex transformations and you are going to use it in the fact or dimension model, you have to go for the permanent table. In this temporary table, which will be active only for the user session. When the user logged off, the session will go off and the table will go off. That time you cannot use complex transformations here. Sandbox testing and quick data manipulations, that is a integrity testing, whatever the incremental testing, those testings can be done in this temporary tables. That can be done in the permanent and transient as well. So main features of permanent, transient and temporary. Data persistent. It is long term and permanent. Medium term in transient and session only in temporary. Time travel. This is up to 90 days. Transient up to 1 day. Temporary table none. Fail safe 7 days. Transient none. Temporary none. Use case production data, staging or intermediate data, session analytics. Cost highest, moderate and lowest. Survival session end yes, yes, no. So these are the main features of permanent, transient and temporary table and we should be very much aware of it because most of the objects will be using a Snowflake data warehouses tables only. Use permanent tables for business critical and historical data. Highly critical business needs and if I want to access the few years back data, I have to go for the permanent table. Transient table like a staging or ETL pipelines where quick loads and transformations occur. So in the transient tables, what I will be doing, only for the staging and intermediate layer of the ETL process, I'll be using this transient table. For a fact and dimension table requires a permanent table. So transient and temporary will not suit for the mark layer. Use temporary tables for ad hoc analytics. Ad hoc analytics means you are doing some development for short term, and within a day you have to close the development, or within few hours you have to close the development. That is called ad hoc analytics, or testing within the session. When the session is active, you do some development, do some testing and come out. When the session is closed, these tables will be erased. Always consider time travel duration and fail-safe implications when designing a data model. To consider these two factors, we have to go for the permanent model. Example workflow. Load raw data into the transient staging table. Clean and transform data into permanent production table. Use temporary table to hold filtered data for analysis or reporting. This layered approach balances the performance, cost, and recoverability. So far in the previous slides, we saw what are the permanent, transient, and temporary tables. Now we are just seeing the example workflow in the ETL. Load the raw data into the staging table. Clean and transform data in the permanent table. Temporary table only for filtering and doing some short analysis. This workflow, if you maintain, it will be good for your data recovery. So permanent tables, it is for long-term, full production and higher cost. Transient table, mid-terms, limited recovery, cost effective. Temporary tables, session only, fastest and no recovery. So these are the three types of tables and its features. And I hope you would have understood in detail what are the different types of tables in this session. Please go through that. If you have any queries or if you need any advanced content regarding this, you can post your queries in the below link shared in this video. Choosing the right table depends on your data lifecycle and recovery needs. Thank you all.